Hello. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to try and help you out a little bit on really understanding the fundamentals of things that you really need to make sure that you're practicing every day to accomplish this really well. You know, it's easy to get caught into the trap of playing like power chords and things like that, and not that those aren't important, they're incredibly important. But your technical ability, your ability to move these fingers are more important than anything else. And so what you want to make sure is when you start practicing every day, one of the first things that you should do is run through all of your chords. And you shouldn't have to look at your sheet. I mean, you should be able to go A, A7, A minor, B7, B minor, C, C7, D, D7, D minor, and so on, just running through those. Chances are some of those you're going to need to work on more because you just do. You want to make sure that you do a lot of bouncing, and I know I talk about this all the time, but it's absolutely imperative. The whole point to getting good at playing guitar is that you don't have to focus when you think about things. It just sort of happens. You know, it's like being a good auto mechanic or a good doctor or whatever it might be. The more you have to really sit and think about things, the longer it takes, and you just don't have that kind of time. So it's important to practice, for instance, just bouncing one chord over and over and over and over and over. And you have to make sure that you're doing it right. This is the other problem that a lot of people have, is that they try and do things, but they're always trying to do things too fast versus trying to figure out where their comfort zone is and then keep building from there. I mean, that's really the discipline of learning how to practice, is knowing what you can do and figuring out how to get better at it, as opposed to just pretending like you can do something, which doesn't do anybody any good, certainly isn't doing you any good. So you have to be honest with yourself. You know, you have to buck up and understand that when you're practicing, you know, sometimes you're going to see holes in certain things that you need to work on, and instead of trying to feel bad about it, just deal with it and get better at it. So the first thing is trying to practice bouncing a chord. If you have a particular song that you're working on, let's say it's moving from D to G, I could practice D over and over and over, and I could practice G over and over and over. But then what I could do is practice moving from D to G, back and forth. Now again, this can get very frustrating after a while until your fingers start really learning how to do things. And this is why I've told you many times too, it's important to learn a variety of songs. You know, don't just sit on one song over and over and over and over, because you're gonna, you're gonna excel at those various techniques of that particular song, but everything else is being wasted. You want to be able to practice, different styles of songs, maybe something acoustic and strumming, maybe something acoustic and picking, maybe something electric and picking, electric strumming, power chords, just a wide variety of things that you're trying to work on. That's really the best way of getting good at being able to play this instrument. If you're only focusing on 5 Black Sabbath songs at the same time, you're going to get good at those techniques, but everything else suffers. So when one of those songs comes back, then you got to start back, and then you're working on just that. Well, then the stuff you were working on with the Sabbath songs are going to start suffering. If you continually work on everything, you're going to be better off. Of course, that does mean that you have to practice a little bit every day. You need to, for instance, you might spend 10-15 minutes just practicing bouncing chords, which you have to keep reminding yourself isn't a waste of time. It's incredibly important, and it's going to accelerate you immensely when you get really good at them. I don't spend 10-15 minutes anymore practicing my chords because I've got them. You don't. And I don't mean that egotistically. What I mean is, there's other things that I need to work on that I do spend 10-15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour working on. And I understand that. And so that's what I need to do. We all have different things that we need to break through on. And this, this and strumming are two of the most important things you could ever learn on this instrument. Everything else is subpar from there. So you want to practice a lot of bouncing, lots of bouncing. One chord you could practice over and over and over and over. If your fingers aren't comfortably going to that shape, they're not ready. Okay, the second thing to understand about these chords is, like I said, trying to be able to move back and forth. When you're learning songs, maybe jump out on Ultimate Guitar and find a really easy song to play that just has chords in it, like an old Beatles song, or, anything. It could be anything. And just see if you can comfortably practice along with it. Flawless, moving your chords, doing your strumming, and if you can't, then you know what you need to work on. And yes, you can go back to the Megadeth tune or whatever, and you can work on those. None of it is more or less important. It's just that you have to understand when it comes to guitar playing, most of your time is spent strumming and making chords. Now, it's easy for us to box ourselves in and just go, okay, well, I'm just going to practice power chords, because to be honest, power chords are easier. It's the techniques that go around power chords that you need work with. For instance, palm muting, down picking, down up picking, and we've talked about all those sorts of things. Those are great techniques to practice on a daily basis as well. So you can see how, how sometimes people think 15 minutes of practice is enough, when in reality it'd be very easy to put in an hour a day and still not have enough time. So you have to figure out, how much time are you willing to dedicate. You might spend 10, 15, 20 minutes just doing chords, spend 10, 15 minutes doing scratching to songs, which I certainly hope you're still trying to do, just finding any old song to learn to feel rhythm to. You can always tell hard rock guys that haven't practiced their fundamentals because they have no sense of groove. They can play down and that sort of thing, but they have no sense of really feeling a rhythm when they play something. And that's why you want to try and cover all your bases. Then you might spend another 10, 15, 20 minutes just practicing, technique exercises, trying to get comfortable with your fingers, those sorts of things. And then we haven't even gotten to songs yet. Then you start practicing your songs. So please make sure that you understand, don't fall into the trap of just practicing like a song or a piece of a solo each day, because you're just going to keep falling further and further behind. You have to make the commitment to really spend some quality time with those things. So anyway, take care, and I'll see you soon.